Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the disappearance of Xana Gosch. And he was a paperboy in the 80s. So I don't think there are paperboys anymore. But especially like before the maybe the 90s it ended, but there used to be where kids could deliver newspapers, and they'd usually ride their bikes, throw the newspaper at the door. And my uncle actually used to do that. My mom said that the whole family would help him fold the newspapers. They would pile in the car and they would deliver the papers really as a family, but he was getting the money for it. But so Johnny was a newspaper boy. So what that tells me about him is he was somebody that, you know, had an entrepreneurial spirit. He wanted his own money and he did something about it. So he disappeared in West Des Moines, Iowa. It was between 6 and 7 a.m. on September 5th, 1982. And the presumption is that he was kidnapped. So that was a Sunday, and he lived in the suburbs. He left home before the sun came up, as he did often. And usually he wakes up his dad, and his dad helps with the route. So it's kind of like what I just said with my mom and the family helping my uncle. So I guess the dad would help him, but this time he just took the family dog and he went to the paper drop. So the paper drop is where somebody that works for the newspaper probably just drops off a bunch of bundles for each kid to deliver in the neighborhood. And multiple paper boys saw Johnny that day at the paper drop. So that's really the last sighting where they could say for sure he was there, because the other sightings are like one person, you know, saw him here, one person saw him there, and that could easily be like mistaken. So later on, another paper boy reported that he saw Johnny talking to a stocky man in a blue two-tone car near the paper drop. And then there's another witness who also saw him talking to the man in the blue car. So I think this validates the story of a man in a blue car. Two separate incidences, two separate witnesses see him talking to somebody in a blue car. So the first person who saw him in the blue car was, you know, another paper boy. But the second person who saw him, it seems to me like he was an adult, because Johnny, the adult's name was John Rossi, and Johnny told Mr. Rossi that the man was asking for directions and asked Mr. Rossi for help. Mr. Rossi looked at the license plate, but could not recall the plate number. So Mr. Rossi, my assumption is either Mr. Rossi lives in a house that was near where Johnny was talking to the guy in the car, and he was, you know, coming out to get his paper, or in his front yard to leave for church or something, and Johnny thought, you know, I don't know anything about directions, I need to get an adult, so he grabs Mr. Rossi to help this guy with directions. And then maybe Mr. Rossi is, since he's an adult, he sees the oddness of it, because you don't ask a child for directions normally. And when you're in the suburbs at 6 in the morning, it's rare for someone to be driving around like lost. You know, it's not like it's a major highway where you just took a wrong turn. It's the suburbs. And so, what are you doing there to begin with? And why would you be lost? So, Mr. Rossi looked at the guy's license plate because he thought it was odd that he's talking to this boy. And then Mr. Rossi can't remember the license plate. And I think we've all been there where we think, oh, I'm just going to glance at something and remember like a phone number or something. And later it's like, it's almost like you didn't look at it at all because you don't remember anything. And I think the best thing to do in a scenario where there's like lots of numbers is just remember the first 3 or the last 3. Don't try to remember the whole thing. If it's like a license plate and you need to like quickly remember it, maybe just focus on 3 numbers. So anyway, poor Mr. Rossi, he kept hoping he'd remember the license plate number, and he even underwent hypnosis to try to remember. So he might feel a little guilty about not being able to help. So he did remember that the license plate was from Warren County, Iowa. So as Johnny walked back north, where his route started, another paperboy noticed a man following Johnny. And then I guess he just went on his way. But then a neighbor around that time heard a door slam and then saw a silver Ford Fairmont speed away northwards from where Johnny's he kept his papers in a wagon. He sped away from the wagon. So then Johnny's parents started getting phone calls from customers that their papers were not delivered. So his dad started searching the neighborhood. He found his son's wagon full of newspapers 2 blocks from their home. They immediately contacted the police and they reported him missing. Apparently, the parents said the police took a long time to get there, and they couldn't say he was missing for 72 hours. The police didn't even arrive until 45 minutes later, so this guy could have been long gone. That's a shame. Like, a newspaper boy is missing, and they're telling the family he might have been a runaway at first. So there were spottings, but there always are spottings, and it's always seemed to be like somebody just looks like him, it's never really them. You know, in my experience, it's usually not them. So he's been missing since 1982. So my theory on this, because there was actually another paperboy that went missing 2 years later from the same area. I feel like it was a kidnapping, and I feel like he kidnapped the second boy as well. My theory is that this guy lived nearby. I think he actually could have been a customer of Johnny along like the newspaper route, and I feel like he has seen Johnny before. I don't think this is a crime of opportunity because it is in the suburbs and people aren't just randomly, you know, driving around on a Sunday at 6 in the morning. So I feel like he might very well be a customer, and he might be one of the people that called and reported their paper was not delivered. You know? Think about it. If you kidnapped your paper boy and you want to make it look like it wasn't you, you're going to call and act like, you know, where's my paper? I haven't seen him. He didn't drop my paper off today. So I feel like it's someone in that neighborhood. It's one of Johnny's customers. You know, some pervert. He's been obviously like dreaming about this young boy. And how old was he? 13. Or no, let's see. Yeah, 13. No, wait a minute. The other paper boy was 13. Oh my gosh, Johnny was 12, you guys. 12. He was just a kid. Oh, it's so sad. So, I feel like it's a guy that lives alone, because I think he went and took Johnny back to his house after he kidnapped him and probably kept him, you know, prisoner, you know, for a long time. Did unimaginable things to him. And then maybe 2 years later, you know, he needs a new victim, so he gets the next victim, which was also a paper delivery boy. That is so crazy. And the police don't know if they're connected. So I looked it up, and Des Moines, Iowa, I want to see how many people they have. Okay, they have 214,000 people. And I live in a city that has 175,000 people. So that's like 50,000 less than Des Moines. But what I'll say is, if we had a missing paper boy and 2 years later another missing paper boy, everyone would feel it's related. There'd be no way that that would happen 2 years apart in our city, you know? Like, maybe in New York City this stuff happens, like, really often. But in cities the size of, like, mine or Des Moines, like, that's not a common crime. And to happen in the same neighborhood, I feel it's related. So that's my theory. The only hope would be is if somehow this guy still has Johnny alive and the other newspaper delivery boy alive, because that has happened in the past where victims have been kept alive. So I hope they are someday able to escape. I'm sure their captor is pretty old by now. I would imagine him to be like 30 at the time that he kidnapped Johnny, and that was like 40 years ago, so he'd be in his 70s. So that is my theory. I think it's somebody on the newspaper route. I should hope that the police have already thought of that and that they talk to each of the customers. But I just wanted to talk about this case and tell you what I thought about it. So subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.
You told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.